What's going on out there, YouTube family? We are back. Me and Lucas, we're about to break down
minus Jorge, right? Jorge did this with us.
He did do this with us. Shouldn't Jorge be here? Oh no. Nah, why would you tell me this now, Lucas?
Because it literally just popped into my head.
Oh no. Jorge. Do you want?
That's a shame. How did I remember that and you didn't?
Review. Bro, you know I've been I've been watching way too much. I've been watching anime. I've been watching foreign films. I've been watching other films. That freaking movie I just recently looked at with the family on Netflix, the Sony picture joint.
Oh, the cartoon movie?
Yeah, I did good to review that yesterday. Okay. He was like, when?
Now.
Oh snap! It's a good thing we did not go live. This is a good thing that I actually recorded this.
Oh no! If this was live, this would be hilarious.
This man said I just got out the shower.
Well, let's get into it, and then he could jump in. Not the shower, into the video chat.
Okay, cool. I'll send you the link where me and Lucas will be, and you can give your thoughts from 7 to 10. Okay, this man was ready to shut him down. Yeah, Jorge is a trooper, y'all. I don't know if y'all gonna actually. I'm probably gonna crop all this out.
Why?
Wait, why would I keep this?
Keep all of this. This is funny. This is funny. This is funny, and this is content. You keep it. You keep it. You keep every minute of it. Nope, you don't. You do not have to cut any of this out. You keep all of this. Because see, we're gonna talk, and then Jorge's gonna jump in. So this gives the reason why him jumping in when we talk. So yes, we're keeping this.
Oh my god.
Let's go. All right. Episode 7.
Episodes 7 through 10 is where we're gonna go through, you guys. If you haven't seen the show yet, full disclaimer, we're going into heavy spoilers, and we're gonna try to recollect this. We hadn't seen this since 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? At least
somewhere in that area.
So
it's been a while.
If we miss anything, I'm sorry. It's gonna be the 3 of us. Right now, it's gonna be me and Lucas, and we're gonna try to break it down. But episode 7 was called Day 7 Nighttime. So the last thing that happened was in 6 was the dad Henry. He went to his boss's house, rummaged through the man's house. We thought he might do something to the wife. He leaves the house for whatever the reason, I can't remember. And then he sees some dude that talks trash to him, and he bashes his head in. I don't know if he effectively kills him, but I think that the beginning of this is he bashed his head and then he shot him, right?
No. He just bashed his head in. He didn't shoot him.
He just
bashed his head. No, he did.
Okay.
He shoots somebody later on. He doesn't shoot somebody here. Shoot somebody later on in the episode for sure. He shoots somebody later on in an episode.
But yeah, so who is his hauntee? I forget what his hauntee's name is.
Bojangles. I have not named him. I just call him Bojangles.
So I'm gonna say something about that guy, bro. The actor that's playing Mr. Bojangles. I think he's doing a great job. I actually think that the way that they actually use the makeup, his teeth, he seemed really immersed into it, and it was just creepy, bro. Like it felt like a black Joker. Like it was really precise in what it was trying to do, and I think the execution of his acting worked to complement it. It was just a lot because he had his own little backstory about what kind of happened to him. And my question to you, Lucas, was all these different spirits, right, that are haunting these people, are they actually spirits that actually had souls and these circumstances happen? that the main dude is just using against them, or was it the main, preacher that was just
conjured all these white people to
conjured
hunt all these black people?
Because it felt like they all had their own specific, stories and memories and stuff like that,
which is crazy.
And so I don't know how to assess it, in my opinion, but I was curious your perspective on it.
At first, I thought it could be a situation where all of them was haunted because of the house, overall hunting of the house, and the house was attacking each and every one of them on a personal level, because that would make sense. That would make sense. As you have Henry fighting Mr. Bojangles. We're going to call him Mr. Bojangles because he does not have a name on his actual show. But Mr. Bojangles is haunting him, and it's a reflection of the way white people see him.
Yeah.
As a token.
Yeah.
And you get Ruby. Saying Ruby right? Yes.
Wait, you talking about Rose or Grace?
Damn it!
Because Gracie is the little girl.
Rose. I said Ruby because she was Ruby in another movie. Oh, that's her real name. I cannot remember which one it is.
So Ruby is her name in this. And maybe in Us, she was Rose. I don't know.
See, there you go. I was right about her being Ruby. You got me confused, and I knew I was right there. Well, and Ruby's reflection of her spirit is kind of what she wants to be.
But it was.
She wants to be the white. She wants to fit in.
Yeah.
And this spirit is supposed to be helping her fit in, but in turn, it is really helping turn her. And then we get, baby girl Grace's ghost, which clearly is her dream of being taught and having that awesome teacher. And then her ghost is the complete opposite of that. Yeah. So it's like the spirits were morphing their worst fears into them, except for Lucky. Yeah. Who's basically her spirit was the actual main spirit of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, she was just legit getting haunted. Like, she was getting tortured and haunted.
But they never fully explain if he's controlling these spirits, the house is controlling these spirits because he's in the house, and I'm assuming it's built on that land.
I assumed that because, we're jumping all over the place, but it's fine because it's all over the place anyway. The show I'm talking about. Yes. Episode 9 structuralizes how this man started. He lost his child, and then he almost makes a pact, with another, what he thinks is a child, but really ain't a child. This is a spirit of some kind, a demonic spirit of some kind.
Yes.
And basically he relents to it. And he's thinking that he's doing a good thing. He's thinking he's being a good man, but really his soul is being slowly but surely tainted and just completely manipulated. And by the end of it, you find out, everybody in the town was completely killed through the fire, as well as the black couple who were tortured, maimed, and killed on the foundation of it, which I have a really big comment about. But to the point, I think it's the town, that the town in and of itself, the area, any black person that goes through, the same exact thing is happening to them. But it's a different entity, though. Because it's not the same. Because that black couple, that lady was talking about, who was it that was haunting her and telling her she needed to
pour the bleach on her children. Bleach her son and husband.
Yeah, so it feels like he's pulling connections to other demonic spirits.
In other words,
inflicting on these people.
In other words, it felt like, unfortunately, because it's kind of hard to do it with this type of show. Would you say that this show was attempting to world build?
It is trying to world build. The way that it freaking ends like, they got something else coming up the next season when it's supposed to be an anthology, bro. It made no freaking sense, bro.
Because we already know this couple is done. This is the end of their story.
Supposedly.
Well, I mean, if you do what anthologies are, you don't continue with. Well, even though we'll get what we think later on of this show continuing, but just the way horror anthologies work, their story would be it. You have to move on to the next portion of it, so it doesn't. Without jumping all the way to the end and trying to bring it back to episode 7 and the realization of all the spirits that are haunting them, I don't think the show ever fully makes it clear if the main guy is controlling all these spirits, or if the main demonic force that gave him this life after death is then bringing those spirits in there to hunt these people, or if the land is so haunted it hunts black people. Like it makes nothing clear exactly of why they're hunted by so many different spirits.
Yeah, and personally I like that, but at the same time it didn't end well enough for me to justify what they're doing. And so it's like, if let's just take Ruby for a second. Ruby was already susceptible to that girl because she didn't have anybody around her at all, and she felt like her mom was crazy. She didn't want to be her mom, and she didn't want to be what her mom represents: Black, proud, strong, and resilient, because she's seen everything her mom's gone through. And that plays out later on in episode 10 when they all have to kind of deal with their specific entities that are haunting them. So it was like every single one of them represents different levels, because even Gracie, like, her thing was that her mom couldn't be there for her. Like, even though she was always around her mom, like, this teacher was the thing that, you know, she relented to. And I don't know, it was just really interesting how detailed and meticulous each one of these entities were, all to kind of round it out that they were just connected to him. But how? And like you said, I don't know. But anyway, so we can get back to this. Episode 7. Again, the husband beats the guy in the head. He goes back home.
No, he beats the guy in the head, and then he breaks into his boss's house. Right after that.
So yeah,
the boss house episode happened in 7. That he broke into his boss's house, because remember the guy caught him at the door as he's surveying the house. So
at the end of episode 6, which is day 7, technically in the morning, it ended with him beating the guy in the back of the head. And episode 7, which is day 7, nighttime, begins with him leaving the house, because he left the house and beat that dude in the head and then went home.
He beat the dude in his head when the dude saw him outside of the house.
Oh, you're right, because then that's when he went in. Wait, what did he do in the house?
It looked like he was going to kill the wife, and instead he drank some liquor, and he used the restroom.
Played on the piano, peed in his
restroom.
Bro, I'm gonna say something about that though. That junk was shot very well. Like, the way that was shot and the music, I was like, I didn't know how to feel. Like, straight out, like, the way I was torn whether I didn't know what he was gonna really do. I didn't know what levels this show was going to really take, to be honest. And I love that. I love that about this show, that I never knew exactly where it was going to go. But that scene I thought was really shot very well. So episode 6.
So we get to that point with him, and they show that aspect of his life. Then I believe that's when they go to show Lucky. And I don't want to call it what I'm about to call it. Just forgive me. The black people part of town with her cousin.
So this is the weird thing about that, because I don't know.
But it wasn't necessarily with her cousin.
The cousin, though. Exactly, because
it wasn't the cousin.
They were over there at her location, but then they went back to the house.
Yeah.
And Gracie, the little girl Gracie was like, "Who are you talking to, mama?" And like, all of a sudden, like, she realized what was really going on. And I was like, bruh, that is not your cousin, dog. And so I thought that was a really dope setup. But then what happened? Because it ended up being like a throwdown, right?
Yeah. And then after that, we get, I think that's when the whole family converges as one, because that's also around the time where we get Ruby, who's at that's when she was at was that when she was at the bonfire? She was
downstairs in the high school or whatever, painting herself completely white and just succumbing to the circumstance. And then she left to go out to the bonfire, all for these folks to see her legit lose her mind. And this is the thing. One thing that I'm gonna say is the negative and a positive is I feel like this one entity that's doing this specifically targeting this family is trying to make them look like crazy black people.
Yeah.
Like it's trying to make them look savage and untamed.
Look
like
threatening.
Even the girl Gracie, when Gracie was being like manipulated by Miss Vera, whatever her name was, it looked like she messed her up so bad. It looked like Gracie was having a mental disorder. Like it looked like she was repeating verbalization.
This is the she's saying the pledge, and then she breaks out to cat in the bag, cat in the bag, cat in the bag.
She kept on saying it, and I was like, this is making her look like a child problem and making it look like she's got a mental disorder. And I was like, this is so like it these moments where I'm like upset are good moments. I get them, but I just don't think they just don't stick the freaking landing, bro, at all.
I see. I disagree. I don't think they stuck it from the beginning, let alone the landing. I think they went off of the rails to attempt to put a lot of stuff in this show. And when you throw everything, including the kitchen sink, into a show, it becomes misguided. And it horribly transcends the message that it's no different for me, the message of this show versus Antebellum. They have the same message. White people are evil. Like we get no white people in this show that's not evil. Not a single one of them.
You get one.
Who?
The gay husband.
No, the gay husband.
I don't see him as evil. I see him
willing to go along and beat the black people if need be.
But no, he didn't though, because he actually left. Remember they went to the house, right?
He burned nigger Heppen into their yard.
Yeah, he did. But I'm saying when they were going to the house to go and beat them down, right? He was the one that stopped the dude and got punched in the stomach for it. And then they went across the way, and then he just was like, "I'm out."
So in other words, he burned nigger heaven into the yard, but he ain't evil. He just like not a nice white person.
I don't see him as a nice man. Yes. I just don't think I don't think he's necessarily evil.
But see, think about though, it's a lot of people. It was a lot of people in that white town that were like that. They didn't necessarily want issues, but they're not good people. Like there's no good. It sends that message that black folks can't trust white folks, and black folks shouldn't move around white folks. And if that was the point of this show, man, we have issues. Because again, in episode 7, when you get to the crux of the whole family getting around again and them attempting to leave, when they finally realize this place is overly haunted, and if they stay there, nothing good is going to come of it.
Yeah, they're officially ready to leave, and then something happens with Lucky. She couldn't. Something started to taunt her, and she was like, "I'm forgetting something." And then she goes down to the cellar area. And lo and behold, we find out what was in the cellar area, what was in the box the whole entire time, which was the remains of her child. And the dad never knew that she had brought it along with her the whole entire time, nor did she. So she dug it up. I can't remember at what point they brought that up. Was it?
It was in episode.
Was it in 5?
What you mean when they
showed a moment where she did it, or was it a flashback? They actually showed her doing it. Yeah, I can't really remember if it was episode 5 or was in the flashback. Oh, Jorge's here. Hey,
what's up, fellas?
Hey, what's up, dude? We're going through episodes 7 through 10 of them.
Yeah,
giving the people what they want.
No, people didn't ask for this.
I was being sarcastic.
I was say it's clear as day they did not ask for this, and they have let the world know they did not ask for this show.
But yeah. So real quick, we're still on episode 7. The last thing we kind of closed off on was when Lucky brought the bones out, and that's when the husband effective.
Oh, did I lose Sam?
No. Yeah. Sam lost himself. Sam
Okay.
unplugged himself, or he muted himself, because I'm clearly seeing his mic is muted. So we left off on episode 7, where Lucky comes out with the bones,
Yes.
and her husband kind of loses it because he doesn't understand why would she dig up these bones, just as the whole family was about to leave what they believe is a haunted house.
Yeah. All right. So that I got feelings about all of this.
Oh, go ahead. We've been talking about our feelings about it.
Yeah. So, well, especially with that, like a few things come to mind, and it's demented. So I get it. So whatever. But how do you not smell that? Like it's a rotting person. Like I don't know what type of cloth you put on it or how special that box is. Like you're gonna smell that.
Now, let me ask a question, because could that be the reason why she was in the garden with the flowers getting that body? Because they're going to attempt to say, like, well, you put, lavender leaves and things of that nature over it. Maybe you don't smell it. Granted, we know that's not true.
Yeah.
We know it's not true.
Yeah. I think there's like that whole scene, because that episode 7, that was when after that, when that came out, that's when the episode ended, right? Because it kind of ended abruptly.
Yes, right at the father holding the baby and breaking down.
Yeah, which 100% agree with that. Yeah, because this was the transition that I think I did not like, because it wasn't, it didn't go from this to, was it like the Covenant 2 where they kind of go through that whole thing? Because that whole episode, I was like, what am I?
That was episode 9. Right after episode 7 is where they go and we find out that she's in an insane asylum.
Yes,
that he didn't put her in for some weird reason that no one wants to explain. How that happens.
Yeah. Okay. So I was, and I know I talked to Sam, I think, a little bit about it. I was all hyped up for this, like episodes 1 through 7.
Yeah,
I was good with. And the ending, like these last 3 episodes, I'm not going to be as positive. I still liked the whole show. I think the whole show overall, I'm just going to say this now, was great. But I thought these final few episodes really like screwed the pooch is the nicest way I can put it.
Okay.
Because it just, well, Sam's not even here. All right, so now we can speak freely. No, I think that a lot of it, like, they left so much on the table here. And it's like little things that never got answered, or maybe I just missed it. So do you remember when he buried the dog in the backyard and you saw like that black ooze coming out?
Yes.
Never again showed up in the show.
Nope.
Never again was mentioned, nothing. And it's like, that was actually like, they could have gone really cool with that. Like, for whatever reason. Okay, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. So
I'm assuming it was possibly or attempted to be shown as showing that the whole land. See, this is where it reverts back to everything that happened in episode 9, which is, God knows, I hated that episode with a passion.
Yeah,
but they attempted to explain what we believe could be the entire town is haunted, and him digging into that land is digging into the spirits of the land. But again, without giving us a conclusion on that or not explaining it better, it just comes across, and which is my issue with from episode 8 to 10. It's a lot of cool moments and no explanation of anything.
Yep.
And that is the fatal flaw. And it starts, the weird part is, it starts off with Lucky being in an insane asylum, and we see Henry there, and we realize Henry didn't like sign anything over for them to take her in there, because he literally says that.
Yeah, and I think that's the part also that, like, what happened in between? Like, 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 did the cops put her in there? Did, like, what all happened there? So that, for me, yeah, episode 7, that one kind of ended in a thing. Now, I do want to ask you, because I know how you felt about what was the white woman who got held hostage? What was Betty?
Yes.
So moving from episode 7 to episode 8. Episode 8 was when we find out that Betty is held hostage.
Betty is now in Cloverfield. That's what it felt like when I said, wait a minute. When did we get to 10 Cloverfield Lane? Like, what is going on with this show?
Budget issues. They had to reuse a set or two. I get it. So, because I know before you were cheering on for her to just get annihilated.
Yes. So, at that point, it was.
So, what were your thoughts about kind of that whole thing? Were you still excited that she was?
I was like, wow, this is too much. Like, this is like, what is the point of this? Like, God, like you went from her being racist, right, to now the milkman is a deranged serial killer who makes her put the lotion in the basket. Like, it makes no sense to do this to this character. And again, that's the issue with the show, is that I don't know what happened. It went off the rails hard from episode 7, which kind of set up a lot of things that you were like, okay, that seems interesting.
Yes.
Okay, Henry thing with Mr. Bojangles and him going through all of that. We finally get the family understanding that all of these spirits are haunting them. What's going to be next? Because this is the part of the horror movie where everything gets really good. And then they decided, nope, we're just gonna pour a lot more stuff on here and not explain anything to you. So to me, for that to happen to Betty, it didn't feel authentic.
Like I felt you could have done so much more with the milkman and that Betty, that whole situation. And even Betty's husband, who ended up, like being the closet gay. Like, you could have done so much more with all that. Like, it was episode 9 where what do you call it? Where
episode 9 is the
episode 8, like day 9. That was when they break into the two neighbors break into the house and end up like, so I think it would have made more sense if it was like those two guys, the milkman and then the white girl, just being like, or like doing like that made more sense. That whole little like locking her up and making her like, oh, I even put the same, like wallpaper that you have in your place.
It was too much. It wasn't needed. And that's what hurts more than anything with this show, is that it just wasn't needed. And by pulling Betty away from her husband, you left a great opportunity to play. Because if you're going to make him the closet gay, which you kind of knew from the beginning he was going to be the closet gay, because they definitely pointed you in that direction. Give the character more to do. Just imagine if she stays around, her husband, who is also like technically at this point a minority, and him bonding over it with them, and then coming to a realization of everything that's being done, and he becomes a semi-hero to the show. But we don't get that because you pulled away the evil witch. So when you pull away the evil witch, you just took away everything else.
It almost makes it feel like the first few episodes where she was such an antagonist were for nothing, like absolute nothing. And this is one of those, which like I still like the show, and I think that's what bothers me, because it's like you could have made this great, and it fell flat on its face at the end of the day. It's like it's almost like they had too many ideas, and they were like, well, let's just try this for this episode, and let's try this for that episode. Because for me, like the Covenant 2 episode, like episode 9.
I'm loving it that you call it the Covenant 2.
Well, that like it was just, it was like not necessarily pointless. That could have been a flashback done in 5 to 10 minutes.
In the end of episode 8.
Yeah,
you could have did this.
And I think slid in there.
And the weird part is, because of what happens here, it kind of makes episode 8 completely pointless.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a flaw of it, is that you sacrificed in a 10 episode season 1 episode to give a backstory that was unnecessary.
Yes. And that was, for me, that was one of my biggest things. This could have been done as a flashback, and then you could have gone so much more, because that would have given you 40 extra minutes.
Now just imagine, Jorge, I'm going to ask you this to see what your thoughts would have been if, instead of, Betty getting kidnapped by the milkman, what happens if we would have found out that the spirit was actually possessing Betty?
Oh.
And that's where everything was happening with them, is because that spirit was possessing her to push the family into a more of the spin that happens with them of being susceptible to everything else. That would have been amazing to have happen.
Yes.
And that's
yes.
See?
Yes. That would have made so much more sense.
Just to have something like that happen on the show, you would have been able to care possibly more about the husband, explain way more why Betty was so evil out the blue,
Yeah.
and even her being more susceptible to the spirit entering her because of what happened with her father.
And it would have made more sense, because even with those spirits, it was the little girl who was kind of commanding the old man at the end of the day, and that the old man could have technically been messing with the milkman.
Yes,
because then you would have seen that persuasion, that oh, you got to do this. Oh yeah, I got to do that.
Yes.
Oh, see, Amazon, call this man.
Yeah, so one of the things I did want to just tap back in here is that,
see how Sam just enters back into our conversation, Jorge, and just attempts to take over. We were vibing.
No, I wasn't. I'm not trying to take over anything. I'm just saying that for me, I felt like there's a lot of things that just don't go anywhere. I felt like Betty as a character, what was the point of Betty? What was the point of having the milkman be, in this involved at all? I honestly, I even said to Jorge before, I was kind of like, it would have made more sense that if the milkman was the military trained person, then he would have went to Betty and been like, okay, I know how to take care of these black people. We're going to just take them out. And we're going to get everything underneath the cut. We're going to make it look like a certain kind of scene. And it would have been Betty, with the milkman and with the rest of the rallying people, because they were already rallying behind Betty to be the one to go against the family, to kidnap the family, to go and try to kill the family. It was all lining up to that. And I kind of was like, to your all's points, I was like, it would have been dope if the milkman was never really he was a entity as well. Because then you're like, oh, well, all of this was all manipulated. All this came from a specific place. But it's kind of like they took the milkman. He was just a crazy person, just like her dad. He brought her in, and then she had an opportunity to kill him. She didn't. And then she just lets him walk out. And he acted like there was nothing wrong. I was like, oh, he's on some other stuff. Ain't nobody just get stabbed in the jugular. Nothing happens.
And just being like, okay, I'll go upstairs now.
and then this is the messed up thing. He was like, oh yeah, she's that dog that's got to get put away. I'm just gonna wait for her to come up here and I'm gonna shoot her. What was the point? I was if he gonna do that, then maim her, then drag her tail back. It was like they wasted Betty as a character when Betty could have been. But that's the white guy there.
That's what I mean
torturing Henry.
That's what I mean by she should have been the one possessed by the main spirit on the show. Because if she becomes the one possessed by the main spirit on the show, and to take it even further, if you're going to try to put correlation of one town versus two black people, and now we have a different town versus these black people, what happened if you made it where the spirits that died in the fire were all the people that were in this town? in East Compton at this point in time.
So
because they kind of hint that could be the case, but they don't.
They do
because they just like, no, they're just racist.
Yeah,
like they because if that's the case, then what the hell happened to Betty? Betty should have been the one possessed by the main spirit, and her possession by that main spirit should have taken over at the town meeting, and you could explain like without pure hatred for them this came from, because you see that in episode 9 when the guy starts to turn against the 2 black people in the town. So if you had Betty slowly turn instead of being such a monster from the beginning, and in other words, she didn't have progression as a character. She remained a monster until she got kidnapped in a way to show sympathy for her. And it became pointless. It almost was like they got to the point and said, we don't know what else to do with this character. Let's kill her.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because they tried a couple episodes back making you feel guilty, like making you kind of be like, oh, she had this rough upbringing and all that. And that was where you and Sam and me completely had different points of views. But then I think to completely basically just waste her for no reason. Like after that, because even, gosh, just thinking about what you were saying, like if she was basically, I guess, possessed by what would end up being the little girl, because she was the one who was
not the little girl, because you wouldn't want her being possessed by that spirit. You want her being possessed by the old man, because the little girl spirit clearly is the more demonic force that wouldn't need to do that portion of it, because you want the preacher.
Girl was the one who was basically controlling what the old man was, what the preacher was doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at it from she's being the little girl, and the milkman would have been the preacher, because the milkman would have been the one doing all the executing, because the little girl, her hands were clean.
See, I would have looked at it as the little girl is the thing that sets up this as an anthology series.
Yeah, it's like the running trade of how this is continuing.
Kind of like an American Horror Story, where technically through all those seasons, you end up finding out it was one connective tissue for all those seasons. And I thought the little girl would have been the connective tissue for this moving forward. But again, they just wasted Betty.
But it's kind of like
wasted an episode, because we've been talking now. Does anyone really remember anything in episode 8 of importance?
Episode 8 was when Lucky was in the insane asylum. Yes, but she got the understanding of what was really going on, because I don't know if he was posing to be one of the security guards or if he was possessing one of the security. It's unclear. I don't know if he was possessing the man that was her security detail, or if he was posing to be the security detail. But it was episode 8 was where pretty much she knew she had to get back because the family was going to die.
Episode 8 is also where, to me, you lose focus of what this spirit is supposed to do. So all of a sudden, he not only just haunts the town area they are, he can hunt her anywhere.
But I thought that the insane asylum was still in the town.
But it wasn't in that same, I wouldn't count it as being in that same stretch. Meaning of the block that they're on.
Because you remember, on the block, but I assumed it was the whole town, because even the black people, each person that's been a mom, has been ended up in this insane asylum. And I kind of figured it was all tied together. Because daggone, man, didn't Lucky kill somebody in there?
But then no, think about it. Then the white woman says that she likes to kidnap black women to experiment on them.
Yeah. She definitely did, but but the bigger thing was that all the family members, and I said this from the beginning to Jorge, I felt like by the end of this, the black folks are gonna go crazy. They're gonna kill everybody, and pretty much that's what ended up happening, because all of them got blood in their hands. Every single one of them except for Gracie, every one of them, because daggone Ruby killed somebody. To try to save her dad.
Yeah, she was defending him. She threw the axe to the back.
But that's not the same.
Killed somebody.
That's not the same.
In the same asylum. What do you mean?
That's not the same. But it's only one person who really has blood on their hands on this show.
But what I'm saying is that for that time period, they all would not make it through the next day, because they all have.
But for that
effective to kill somebody. Yeah.
For that time period, I mean, like, we can't even. I lost focus on the time period after a while because everything just started going too cuckoo crazy in the show. Like, they start throwing everything at you at one time. Like, hey, watch this cool moment. Now watch this cool moment. Now watch this cool moment. Now watch as we end this show like Freddy Krueger Dream Warriors, where we get into everyone's dream and they all escape. Like, it was too much.
It's hard because the actual execution and the filmography and the way they set up were executed very well. Because to be honest with you, the freaking theater sequence with your boy Henry and him having to watch the whole circumstance broke me. Like, I felt like the execution of how they did it was good. It's just way too much being thrown without enough.
See, now, is it that the way they show him to sing? Because to me, it ends horribly. The whole Lucky grabbing his hand and bringing him back, and like I didn't have overly, because by the 10th episode, I wasn't crazy. I knew how all of this was going to go because they telegraphed it way too much. Like, it gets to the point where she gets in the house, and then all of a sudden, we need to go spirit by spirit here. Let's rescue the family. Like, let's give ourselves a conclusion here. And it's like, come on, man. You could have, at the same time, you have to learn how to go. You have to learn how to have your story be streamlined and go further than that. And push it to a place that you needed it to be pushed to. Because even to the point where you get to Mr. Bojangles and he shoots him, I'm even willing to allow him to shoot a spirit and it actually affect him. Mm-hmm. And then you wipe away the paint, and of course, it's a white man. Like, it's like, come on, man.
That definitely was not a white man.
Like, man. Like,
but my issue is deeper than that, though, because it doesn't freaking really end. Like, the very last sequence is like, oh wow, now that the curse or whatever is being, well, okay, I want to talk about this. I brought this up with the guys before, but I'm gonna talk about how I feel about the ending. Then I'm gonna ask you guys a really deep question.
So, are we gonna talk about the Covenant episode first?
No, not yet, because that ties into this. That's the reason. Why, like, it's actually gonna be a setup for that. Because the way that the freaking episode, the last episode ends, is, of course, Lucky overcoming the situation, and then everybody is ready to just kill this black family, and then all of a sudden, like, there's fire up in the air, perimeter around the house. Makes no sense. Then the perimeter goes down, and then they go to the door, ready to meet the circumstances, and then the episode just ends when, again, all these black folks got body counts on them. There's a dead sheriff somewhere. There's somebody being on the back of the head. There's somebody in their basement that's dead. And Lucky escaped from a sane asylum, and they're the only black folks there. How does this really end for them? Like, realistically, they be all going to jail or getting the electric share. So it's like, it doesn't really. Is your
disappointment that it didn't show you what you could have possibly pieced together? Because here's the weird part. I had literally no issue. I had lots of issues with this show. I had no issues with the last shot. In all honesty, that's the way it should have ended.
But why? So I get it from a Get Out standpoint. Like, if Get Out had went with the alternative where showing this man in prison, it would have been depressing. I wouldn't have cared.
No, not that part. Just, how many horror anthology shows have you watched?
Not as many as you. I can tell you that much. But I know where you're getting at. Where you're getting at.
This ending is very typical of those type of shows. It does not give you a conclusion of a sort. That's not what the point of the show is. It's not going to, like, wrap up the story in a nice little bow, and then that's going to be like, so that's what happened to them. No, It leaves you wanting more. Here you go, right here. What's the difference between the way this ends and the way the Watchmen ends?
But the difference
because the Watchmen does not give you a conclusion.
It's true.
It leaves you wide open, wondering what's going to happen.
It's true, but it's an effective difference. I want to see what happens next for Watchmen. There's no other way that this can go. Realistically,
no. You're terrified to see what happens next to them in this, which you should be, because it's a horror show. It should terrify you what's going to happen to these people. But again, it just leaves an unnecessary door open. But that's what these shows tend to do. So my issue was the execution up until that point. I didn't care what happened to them, like at all, because the execution up to that point wasn't what it should have been.
So this goes to episode 9 or
Covenant episode, as Jorge calls it. Covenant 2 episode.
Is it 9 or is it 8?
No, that's 9.
It's 9. So episode 9. The reason I had a really big question for you guys, foundationally, you had this preacher. Again, I went through this already. Lost his son, and then he found this entity child, brought it on this ring, and the child kind of was like, he or she saw the black people down the street, was like, warned him that they're coming or whatever, and then he decides to befriend them supposedly, but really there's some other things really going on, and it all ends at a certain terrible conclusion, which we'll go over. But my real question to you guys is this: how is it possible that he did this? The town got burned alive from killing these black people, right? The black woman, the very last words that she said, "I put a curse on you for what you've done," right? Mm-hmm. And then he, submits himself to this entity and becomes a curse on the land that she had already cursed. I don't understand that. I was going to ask you guys' perspective, because the black woman put a curse on the town and the town went up in flames, right? Yeah. And then he goes down and saves himself. I guess I just answered my question. He went down and made a pact with this other entity to exact his revenge or whatever to keep himself alive. But in doing that, he's systematically doing, spiritual racism and killing and manipulating and terrorizing.
The point you said spiritual racism, and then they're going to continue after that.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Well, the spirit was racist. Let's just start there. The little racist spirit is the one who got him to torture the black people.
But
it makes no sense.
But the weird thing is that the last shot we see of him, he was blind. And I was going to ask you guys,
black people.
That's what I was saying, is that I feel like he was blind the whole entire time, that he didn't know. And that's why I was asking you guys, because I was like, well,
he didn't know what?
I don't. So when the last time we saw, he was blind. When in the Covenant episode 9, was he blind then? Was he blind this whole entire time? And that was the reason why he was okay with being around these black people. I was curious, because the last shot we showed.
Because at the beginning of the Covenant episode, when they talking and he said, "Notice I didn't say blank. I said people." Like, he let them know up front, like he understood that they were black, but his town wasn't racist. He literally says that when he first meets them.
Yeah, so I think he was just losing his vision, because at the very end, when he's walking, before everything goes crazy, when he kind of loses his cross on the ground. It's just blurry. But then when that was when the black woman, when she gives him that's when he starts kind of seeing her as like, what was it, like a burning flesh of that was like that quick little flashback type of thing. So yeah, I just think it's more of him losing his vision. And that was, I didn't think he was blind to it. That would have, that maybe would have made a little bit. Now that this episode was just pointless to me. Like I was not.
They stole this character from a movie and then put him in this show.
Wait, what?
They stole this whole setup from a movie. Y'all don't know what movie this was? I literally knew the moment I saw him, and I said, "Oh my God, no, they didn't steal from." to steal from a bad horror movie.
It ain't Stickman, is it?
No, it's literally Poltergeist 2 to the T. I don't remember the Man in Black in Poltergeist 2. It's literally the worst. It's the worst horror sequel ever. One of the worst horror sequels ever made. And at the beginning of it, you get this dead spirit preacher that comes back to get Caroline. And he haunts the family in their house as he was haunting and killing Native Americans because they were Native Americans. Literally, all they did was change it to black people.
I legit blocked that movie out of my head. I'm not gonna lie.
The moment I saw,
I'll be honest, I don't remember that at all. That
moment movie, I saw it, I said, "Oh my god, this is Poltergeist 2." I said, okay. So then I kind of started putting piece to piece together of what was going to happen because I said, "Oh, treat the monster like he's Poltergeist. He's Man in Black in Poltergeist 2."
That's interesting. I did not put those two together.
See, horror movie logic. I
did not.
I talk all the time about superhero logic. Horror movies have the same exact type of logic, where if you've seen one, you kind of know where all of them are going to go to, and this one was so telegraphed, and that was my issue. Is in the first 4 episodes, this show is really good, and I remember us talking, and I said by episode 5, I said it's shocking, but it's okay. Episode 6, I was like, it's not bad.
Yo, episode 5 was terrible. I don't know what you're talking about.
Episode 7, I was like, okay, this ain't the best.
So I'm gonna say this now that we've gotten past this point, now that we know that actually happened, does that give you? Well, no. I guess it doesn't matter you because you disregard the show at this point.
Yeah, but it didn't. It had no impact because here's the other weird part. We're just never going to know. So these were just random ass white people that just walked up on them and decided, let's kill this baby this day.
Yeah.
That's basically
weird that nothing happened and no one went looking for, like, if someone kills my child.
In that time period, with black people in the country, do you not think they would have went and tried to kill those white people?
Yeah.
We knew. We knew they would have.
Like,
so it just didn't make sense. And for someone who is suffering from PTSD, that wouldn't be a trigger.
I mean, well, see, that's the thing that I couldn't put the pieces
is his trigger, but that wouldn't be your trigger. Come on, man.
I mean, to be fair, though, I mean, he was already far gone after episode 2 of this. I mean, but he was not a symbol of
think about it,
mental stability.
But that's what I mean. Are you telling me a group of white people coming and killing your child when you're mentally not really there anyway would not have? That's why I didn't. You know what? It was shocking what happened in episode 5. It's the after that moment when they go through everything else that just, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm good. The whole around the funeral, you get one black man saying, man, we need to go ahead and kill these white people. And other man, you ain't got nothing to lose. You just killed his child. What else was there for him to lose at that point?
So this is the weird thing, though. Like, I feel like, well, I mean, I guess you're kind of right, because at the movie theater, he broke. Like, he officially broke. Like, he was gone. Like, that was it. That was the straw. But it's kind of like, I think what would be more torturous is if you never did see it. But and you never. Go ahead.
So he saw it in the movie theater.
He finally saw it in the movie theater.
But hear me out here for a second. What if it never happened? What if that whole time she really did end up killing her own baby? And the spirits, they were just using that story, and that's how she was covering up for it, just to lead them from North Carolina over to Compton.
So I held on to that idea that Lucas posed when we did our review for episode 5 all the way until episode 10. in episode 10, the very last moment for Lucky, when she was facing off against the preacher or whatever, that was the moment that I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be the trump card, and he's gonna say, "But you did all this. I didn't do it. You did it." And that's when I thought that was gonna happen. And I know for a fact, if she did actually do it, he would have used that and broke her. That's the only reason why she didn't break, because she was like, "Yeah, this happened to me, and I've gotten through it. I've gotten over it. You could."
But then all the kids were like, "Oh, mommy ended up hurting." I forgot what the kid's name was.
Yep, Chester.
Yeah, but the dad never once said, "No, like your mommy got assaulted and someone else killed him." He never once confirmed that story to the kids.
Yeah, no, I look, I'm not negating what you're saying. What you're saying makes sense, but the way that the show frames it and executes it, it shows that she didn't, and that, you know, this is just something that did happen to her.
They use it,
but again, that's a part of the problem with the show, is that
they use it as her overcoming. They use it as her overcoming moment.
Yeah, they literally use that as,
even though I said it, Jorge, you said it here, it'd have made so much sense in a much better show if that was the case.
Yeah,
because that would make so much more sense. Instead of these random white people that just show up randomly and want to kill your kid, if she'd have killed this kid, and then that's why they put her away.
But not just that, but then it would have made even, like, if that actually did happen, like, why would you move your family from like a tight community to a community where you're a complete outsider when your wife just dealt with all of this?
So, like, so I think when we talked about that idea and that possibility, I felt like if that was the possibility, then there is no supernatural anything going on. I think if that ends up being the actual reality, then what all the supernatural stuff, it didn't happen at all. It's just mental instability from the social injustice of the climate and the circumstance, like the PTSD of the situation, the trauma of all of it is causing all this to happen, regardless of the fact. And so for me, it was like, if that was the reality, then there is no supernatural influence or anything. It's just these people are broken because of what happened and their circumstance mentally and emotionally. So it's like, I feel like you can't, if that is the case, then there's no point of the supernatural side. You feel me? That's just my personal opinion, though.
But I mean, and then we get episode 9, where clearly it's letting you know, nope. Supernatural element is clearly in this show.
And exactly, and that's where I kind of like rested at, for good or bad. But that's why
Jorge is 1,000% right. It still literally makes no sense for him to move his family away from the tight-knitted community,
and not just
after the tragic. And this is supposed to have been right after the funeral. He moved them away.
Yeah, and you have a family like a couple blocks away, like that you could be chilling with.
Yeah, because that was after, shoot, what episode was it? Was it episode 8 when that was revealed of what his plan was and how he kind of carried it out, why he carried it out and everything? And it was like, it was a really fast cutscene as to why he decided to move them out, but it still never made any sense to me. I'm not gonna debate that. Like, it doesn't make sense, and it's an irrational situation. Even though, you want to get her into a safe environment and a circumstance, but that won't it. That was never it. And you never talked to her about, you know,
they literally never had a discussion about them losing their kid.
Well, we never saw it.
No. Think about it. No. Go back for a second here. We went from the funeral
to him in the car.
Yes.
Because the episode we went 5,
to the funeral. We went to the funeral to her walking around and him like, you know, mom's going to be fine. Mom's going to be fine. And then the next thing you know, he gets a job offer and he hops in a car. She is still loopy when he tells her we have to leave.
But so this is where the episodes to me become disjointed. So the episode you're describing, it was like the explanation of showing how it quickly progressed. But episode 5, you see her for weeks on end going into the cellar, going and losing her mind, and going back and forth.
Let me ask a question: is that weeks or days?
I don't know.
We assumed weeks, but if we pay attention to when he gets the call and everything that happens, it's days.
I just assumed it was weeks based on
because logically it would make sense for it to be weeks and not days, and instead they made it days.
See, but we can't prove yay or nay.
No.
Because it was a flashback we saw him.
No. But remember though, that was the flashback in episode 9. I think it's 9, 8 or 9, when they clearly pinpoint when the baby passed and how quick that move happened.
Yeah.
But no,
and that's why here you go. That's why the rest of the people didn't know the baby was dead, because it happened so fast. From the burial to the move, it happened really fast.
Yeah, because when she goes to and hangs out with like her cousins or like the dude's cousins,
they're asking them about where the baby is.
Yeah,
if this happened weeks, they would have known.
So are we saying that? Okay, it's two things. It's one or two things. The husband is just so egotistical in his own like perspective of whether the family needs to go, or is that he just couldn't deal with it himself and just was outside of his mind anyway?
Well, we see that he got offered the job, and the moment he got offered the job, he took it.
Yeah.
With no questions asked, he took it.
But it's kind of like he was in almost denial as well, because, all right, so I'll give you a good example. You remember when the cops, right, came to their house, right, and they had him jade up, and they started asking the question about the picture. He never got upset. It was a little girl that got upset.
Yep.
And so I bring that up to ask, was he not in denial about it? Because he never uttered his son's name. He never brought it up.
Was he in denial, or because everything happened so fast, was he still in shock?
I feel like it was a combination of the two, because you can't, because he had to have known.
And
well, I don't know. I don't know.
Here's the more interesting part.
I don't know. He probably was still in shock, to be honest.
At that point, would he have known if she did it or they did it?
I don't think he would have. Well, I'm gonna say this,
because we never see any evidence of them. We only see her. We never see evidence of them. He never sees evidence of them.
I don't think that he could handle the answer either way, to be honest with you. I don't think he even wanted to go there.
So was the movie theater way more about him coming to the realization that she didn't do this, something else did it?
Yeah, that would make a lot more sense.
It would, wouldn't it?
It would make a lot more sense, because then it's like this, instead of it being denial, that my wife is actually crazy, that no, my wife wasn't crazy, and this happened and I wasn't able to do anything about it. Exactly. Better yet, I never did anything about it. Because you're right. It would make more sense that in his head, my wife is crazy, but we're going to have to keep this going. And I can't deal with this right now. We got to keep pushing. Because the whole entire time he's sitting there telling the whole family, no, we got this. We got this. We got this. Like, what are you talking about, dog? Like, we don't got this right now. And so, yeah, I think that would make more sense that in his head, he really did think that something was wrong with his wife. And even every explanation that he gave to everybody else, that he never denied saying that his wife wasn't crazy. Because the lady,
even when she locked him up, when the lady locked her up, he didn't say she wasn't crazy.
He wanted her to see him, but he never said she wasn't crazy.
Yep.
You're right. Yeah. And so, yeah, man, that is messed up. Man, that should have been executed way better.
These final episodes could have been this could have been so much better.
So, gentlemen, at this point, we have cleared up what we thought about the show. Here's the overall question here. What are your overall thoughts about the show? What are your thoughts about it maybe having a second season? And the last part is, what are your thoughts about people's reaction to the show?
Jorge, you go first.
Yeah, I still like the show. Like, even though the ending to me felt there was a lot of unnecessary wasted time in the final, like third of this whole thing. I still liked it. I mean, I still think it definitely did what it was trying to do, which is shock value, so on, all that. So yeah, for me, the show's still good. I think the middle episodes and the first episode, I think I gave them like an 8 out of 10. I would probably maybe drop it down a little bit, and overall maybe give this like a 7 out of 10. Yeah, like I just that's probably where I would put it. This would be neat, and it would just be a ripoff. But like, I love American Horror Story, and I love the same characters and just like, if you keep this same cast and just kind of twist it to different stories, like that would be dope. Like I would be all for that. Do I think they're gonna do that? No.
Of course not.
Yeah. But that would be stellar, because I did think that this cast was top notch. And their acting and everything was very well. In terms of, I guess your last one was like what people are saying about it and all that. Like episode 5 got all the shock value, like I think all of us agreed it would get. But I have not heard as much rumblings. It's almost like after episode 5 it peaked, and then it just kind of like just went into the the realm of there's 10,000 other things to watch and stream. But yeah, I think this was one of those that possibly could have peaked earlier, because can you imagine if we would have seen that episode 5 scene playing out on episode 10 instead of on 5?
Well, I think it would have got more people to watch the show.
Yeah,
because it may have seemed like it peaked at episode 5, but the issue was most people checked out at episode 5. That was it.
Did.
They said enough is enough of this black trauma as horror. Like they were already on the edge of checking out like after the second episode. Episode 5 just sealed it for them. They was like, yep, no, I'm not watching black torture porn. I'm good. Yeah. And they gave up on it. And they said this is not going to be the show for them. That's what I meant. I like, what do you think? Well, Jorge, what do you think about a second season? Do you think there's a chance for one?
Yes, I think there is a chance. And maybe see, but this would go against exactly what I just said about the whole thing. But what if they did it with different races?
Yeah,
I think I said that. We talked about that before.
We brought it. I think we talked around that. Probably you and me, Lucas, talked around that idea.
Yeah, so it's like second season could be like Latinos. Third season could be Asian people. Just kind of seeing how
just run the racist torture gamut of.
It's a new genre.
This would become the most hated show on television. Very quickly.
Yes.
Hey, look, if they can get viewers, then they've done their job. So yeah, for me, I did appreciate the show. I think that the cast did a very good job from what they were given. I think that they really went for it. In terms of the era, in terms of the mental state and capacity of certain characters. I really appreciated how well they went into those. But it's not for everybody. Like this isn't a show that it's gonna make you feel good. I think when we were watching it, and Jorge can attest to this, like one of our good friends, DeMonte, was like, it's trauma time. Like legit, that's what he would refer to, like, yo, I'm ready to look at the next trauma episode. And for me, I do think the show is good. I think the back half of it is weak and doesn't connect the process of the show in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, it actually kind of derails it in a lot of different ways, even though I think there were some really good moments. There was some really good scenes. But there was way too many wasted characters and connections to characters and backstories. Because I feel like, again, if they would have went to every single one of those spirits that were connected to these people, because even the preacher said to her something along the lines of, what if this doesn't end? What if you do this and this never ends, right? And they think that the spirits are gone, but they're not. Like, they all are individual spirits that were just tied and linked to him. That would have been more intriguing, but they didn't do that. They just kind of kept it really streamlined and linear and going all over the place, unfortunately. In comparison to Lovecraft, I love this more than Lovecraft. I'll tell you that much. I think the actors in Lovecraft do way more from an acting standpoint, but I think this was I appreciated this a lot more than I did Lovecraft personally. As far as a continuation of this, I think that the world would be something I'd be interested in, but I feel like episode 9 just ruined it. Any kind of world building, I don't know that I care anymore because of the way that the whole town situation was done. The execution of the town situation is like, okay, so from that point all the way up until 2021, do I really care about seeing all these different people that are going around this town area getting tortured by these insane, racist spirits? Like, I don't. So it's kind of like they lost me. If episode 9 never happened at all, like it was just removed, I think the show would be 10 times better, because they blew their load in explaining why this is kind of happening without foundationally letting it kind of just coast this way. So I don't know, that kind of tears like the anthology excitement that I have. I am more interested in a second season to see where we go from this point, but that's not what they said they were going to do. And then from the critical reception, I said to everybody, and I said to Lucas, and I was like, episode 5, the internet's gonna explode. Like, they're not gonna vibe with this. I was like, people right now are in a place of mental discomfort, and they're dealing with so many different racial things that are all over the place that they're just really looking for escapism. They're not looking to be enthralled into more racial dissension. And this show puts that to the forefront. But to my opinion, I talked to a coworker, really good coworker, and I told him, I was like, bro, look, you got a sense for the spirit, dog. Don't look at this show. I told him straight up, I was like, don't look at the show. This ninja goes and like looks at the trailer immediately after I say that. And then he was like, I'm not gonna look at it anymore. He goes to his barbershop. The barbershop was talking about the show, and they were like, yo, man, this joint is terrorizing me, man. Like, I'm kind of traumatized watching this and stuff like that, but I can't not look at it. I want to keep watching. And then they were telling him everything about the show that I told him not to look at. And then they started talking about episode 5. They were like, oh my gosh, it messed me up. I was crying. And so there are people out there that were engaged with the show, but the critical reception in the beginning of it was what hurt the show more than anything. More people were like, I can't handle this. I can't do this. And so I don't know that there's enough merit to people wanting a second season. So I'd rather have a second season of the show wane right now that I could probably get people to rally behind than to say, yo, we need another season of them. Nah, bro, we don't need. So for me, I would love to see it continue from that moment and continue forward. I've lost interest in seeing it from an anthology standpoint, but I mean, there are some intriguing and ideas here, but I don't know. That episode 9 messed it up for me, to be quite honest with you. As far as my rating, same as Jorge, 7 out of 10, maybe 7.5 out of 10. I really did appreciate some things about the show from a foundational standpoint, but I don't know. Lucas, what about you, man?
Oh, well, my rating this was 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
this is not a good show, and I don't know too many people who even made it to episode 5. Most people I know who watched the show gave up at episode 1, and they was like, "Yep, no, I'm not doing this with them," and they saw this not as a show that pushes trauma in a good way, and that's the problem with this show. It pushes it as a shock value way. Because you can push trauma in a good way. And for most people, that's what Lovecraft Country did. It pushed trauma in a good way because it pushed trauma and then gave you escapism behind it. Mm-hmm. This was just, let me beat you over the head with it. There's no difference for me from this show to the Eli Roth horror movies. I can't remember off the top of my head. The extremely horrible ones. The extremely gory ones.
Oh, you're talking about
the one where they pulled the eyeball and he cut the eyeball off. Like, it was just like trauma for trauma. And that was the issue with this show. I said in the first 4 episodes, matter of fact, in the first 2 that me and Sam reviewed, I said the show is all over the place. I said, but what's keeping me interested is the spiritual aspect of it. I want to see if it's going to stick to the horror movie tropes and give me a good Conjuring like spirit type show, and instead it didn't. And when it finally reveals the spirit, it just goes downhill from there. Mm-hmm. So while I can say the first 4 episodes are thrilling enough to keep me intrigued, the 5th episode lost me, and it didn't lose me because of what happened. It lost me because it stopped making sense. And the moment you stop making sense is the moment I check out of a show. And I kept on watching, hoping that, well, the spiritual element would kick in. Because, again, it has some great scenes in this show. It has some great moments in this show. But it leaves so many things that just don't get fulfilled. I mean, the whole thing with Henry breaking into his boss's house. And what that could have been and what that should have been. Yeah. And you pulled back on it. And there was no need to pull back on it. Yeah. Like, if you're going to go full throttle with a show on certain scenes, you got to do it all the way around the board.
Yeah, because I was waiting for the whole time to see Betty and Lucky really
go at it.
Go at it, like not just a slap. Like I wanted them to really just hash this thing out because they both are dealing with their own trauma, specifically in different ways.
This turns into, and I think this is a really good analogy because it just popped into my head. There's no difference from the switch we get from Betty to the spirit being the main antagonist than we got in The Village. When you thought it was the monsters and then magically it turned to something else and you're like, wait a minute. No, this is not what I checked in here for at all. This is not what I'm here for. Don't do this. And that's what this show does. As aspects for it possibly trying to get a sequel, the horror anthology route is the only way you can get a sequel. I would not care about what happens with Lucky, Henry, Ruby, and Grace. No, I don't care what happens with them. Kill them all. Let God separate them at the end. I don't care. I don't care what happens with them. And that's because for these type of shows, that's what it's supposed to actually do. I don't particularly care about that. I just want the continuation to happen. It reminded me of American Horror Story, Murder House, where I really didn't care about the family. I cared about how are we going to continue this afterwards. And if you could jump into something else while keeping, as Jorge said, it would be awesome. If you don't keep the whole cast, certain characters, you pinpoint them, change them to something else and bring them back like an American Horror Story, that would be great. But that would be also the only way this show could survive. Unfortunately, Black people have decided that this show won't survive.
They have.
Black people have decided that this is it. Like, they no longer want you to give them this type of torture porn. They want you to be more creative. I think if it would have been something to do with leaning more on the spiritual elements of it, while still having racism, it's a time period where racism has to exist.
Yeah.
But you can go too far with it. And I think that's the issue here. It just went too far. Lovecraft Country had racism. obvious racism too in it. It just never went too far with the racism. Like they knew when to pull back because they knew when the audience would say, that's too much and I can't make it through the rest of your show. So they pulled back enough of it where it became easily digestible for people. This is like me watching Eye on the Prize over and over and over again. No, I don't want to be tortured over and over and over again. And that's what this show gives you, is constant torture. And it's just too disjointed to be enjoyable to watch. But it has elements in it that you wish were perfected better.
So do you think that if, like, this, I'm going to pose a question to you, Lucas, directly. Imagine if the preacher was never the actual entity at all, but all these other spiritual forces were, like, in fact, like, infecting the family and trying to possess the family. Do you think that foundationally the show would have went a little bit better for you from the supernatural side? Because take him completely out of the equation, everything with his story completely. And
here's the weird part. I don't think it's not his story that's the issue. It's actually the outside racism that's the issue. And that was always my issue with this show, is how do you balance both of them? Mm-hmm. How do you balance the supernatural element, which a lot of people who continue to watch the show, they continue to watch it for that reason, versus you hyper extending the racism in this show to the point where you made it uncomfortable.
So I feel like for me, it was the racism from, like, him. I was like, I don't need
right here.
Like a racist.
Could this whole show survive without the baby dying? In all honesty, besides it being a shock moment, why? Why does it need to happen?
That's actually
what does it lend to the story that it happened? Nothing. It's just a shock valued moment. That is it.
The way that the show frames it, with y'all's theory of Lucky actually have being done it, there's no point technically to it from the way the show frames it. Like, they could have easily have just decided to move there from North Carolina because he gets a promotion, and that's where he just chooses to do.
And then the other forms of racism kick in.
Yeah.
But you also kick in a spiritual element, and you don't let it be like two-handed punching them repeatedly. And then you don't throw a dead baby in there to, like, be the icing on the cake of showing just how racist people can be. Like, it was one of the things where when you look at it in totality, it's unnecessary. So when you do something like that and it becomes unnecessary, people tune out and they be like, nope. Because at this point, we know what you're doing it for. You're not doing it for storytelling purposes. If that would have been done more and it explained way more of the storytelling purposes of it, it could have worked for people.
Yeah.
You can have that scene work for people if you tie it into the story better than they did. In all honesty, they didn't tie it into the story at all. They just left it out there that this is something that happened.
Yeah, like that's the reason why she's messed up and why the family is affected by it.
Instead of just being a black woman in the 50s moving from North Carolina to California, I'd be darned if that couldn't have been just more than enough for her to be unhinged.
Yeah, it definitely
with never losing a child. That is more than enough for her to be unhinged. Because if it would have been her dealing with spiritual elements and a culture shock of being in an all-white neighborhood and what happens with that move, you got a great show.
Yeah.
You got a great show just focusing on that. Because the culture shock from coming from Carolina to California, it's more than enough of a horror racism element. And then you throw a spirit in there for some weird reason. And if you would have been smart, you'd have had the spirit follow them from North Carolina.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things where these open-ended problems happen because the little girl had expressed that Miss Vera was in North Carolina and followed. That's why I said that if the supernatural forces were disconnected from him, that's why I thought that these supernatural forces were disconnected from him, but they never elaborate on that. And
he's unnecessary. He's also unnecessary.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if episode 9 didn't exist and he wasn't in it at all, it was already enough. Because from a mom, imagine if she was the only person that didn't actually see anything, and everybody else did, and they think she's crazy, but she's like, "Yo, my little girl seeing this tall creature."
All three of us are writing a much better show for them. Yeah. We need to be quiet because unless Amazon is cutting us a check, we will not fix your show in a season 2 for you. But yeah, that all of those are elements that are the issue with this show. Jorge's pointed out elements. You pointed out elements. I pointed out elements that if they would have done any of these things, this would have been a really good show. But instead, they went shock value. And I think it's going to be difficult to say this. Okay. For Black shows, it is necessary to have something this bad on television. You have to. And the reason you have to have it is because white people have shows like this that happen all the goddamn time, where it is just over the top for no apparent reason. And people sit through it and they're like, well, it's okay. Somebody's going to like it. That's what this is. At least it's showing now that maybe, just maybe, you can get bad Black shows and it not mean the end of all Black shows. So I'm perfectly fine with it. And as Jorge pointed out, I would love if this happened with more races, with more shows where you can have a horrible Latin show. Absolutely horrible. But guess what? It doesn't mean that all Latin shows have to go away because this one was so bad. Like this is literally the way Hollywood should work. When you get a show just as bad as them, and yet people can compare it to a show that they love, like Lovecraft Country, and say, you know what? They're similar. One we absolutely hate, the other one we love, but hey, it is what it is. At least they're making the project.
Yeah. Look, all I'm gonna say is this, and this is off record and on record. Lil Marvin better not do the next anthology about Asian community. Don't do it.
Here's the thing.
It's not the time.
I don't. This show's not going to continue. I think Amazon kind of, as I said from the beginning, Amazon told us already that this show wasn't going to continue by doing something they don't do for any of their shows.
At least the whole,
which was drop the whole thing at one time.
And I was like, I don't know how people binge this show. This is not.
That's what, and that's even. But then to me, that shows just how much they cared about this show. This is the last thing that should be binged at all. And HBO knew better than to make Lovecraft Country bingeable.
True.
They knew better. They said, no. Because even though it's light on it, it's still heavy enough that it would have overwhelmed you. Because it overwhelmed us when we watched the first 5 episodes of Lovecraft Country.
Yeah, so because people needed like that weekend to process what they saw and talk about it and rant about it. And I think it would have been better for this show too.
So then I have another question then, maybe pointing more to Jorge. Do you think this show would have been received better if it was week to week?
So from a marketing point of view, yes. Like I think that's one of Netflix's biggest flaws is that they release their shows all at once. Because people will talk about the show for a month and then it just dies. So unless you have constant things that keep coming out, I think releasing shows week by week. I mean, look at Falcon and Winter Soldier. Look at WandaVision. People are talking about those shows nonstop. You have something like this, we're talking about it, but no one else in my circles are talking. They talked about it probably the opening weekend. Maybe it's like maybe 2 weeks max, and then after that, it was just radio silence.
Yeah.
So I think it hurts shows. I think The way Amazon did Invincible, I like that. Drop 3 episodes, give someone just enough taste where you're like, oh, okay, I kind of understand all this, and then make them wait one at a time. But yeah, when you dump it all out, I don't think it's beneficial to anybody.
Unless you're like a Netflix. Netflix can dump it all out because Netflix pumps out enough content to do it.
They got all
you got to really have the content to do something of that crazy to do it. But as you pointed out, Amazon hasn't done this with any show. Like, they don't do this. This almost made me think they just didn't care. They said, nope. And we'll get a bigger picture of it to me with the Underground Railroad. If they do that week to week, that tells you they didn't care about them at all. They just wanted it gone. They decided, hey, we messed up. It's actually the Netflix format of Netflix dump shows like that just in case they're bad. Because if I dump it all on one weekend, guess what? By the next week, I'll have a different show out there. And you'll go right to that show instead. And I don't have to explain to you or sit week to week with a show being bad anymore.
Yeah. I got some bad news for you then, Lucas.
Look,
if IMDb is correct, all 10 episodes of Underground
No. That's what I said. No. If they drop it all that way, then they don't care about the show. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, because clearly we've had access to it, and you didn't hear me ask for it one time, did you? Nope. Not a chance. I didn't volunteer. I didn't volunteer for Trooper. I did none of that for this show. I didn't open my mouth about the Underground because I don't watch slave shows. But like, it to me, it just shows how much they care about a project.
Yeah. We'll see.
That's true.
We'll see if it gets a second season. At this point, I don't think anybody's asking for a second season.
No one is asking for a second season.
Do you guys think that they possibly dropped it all at once because of the shock value? And they knew it was going to go one of two ways. You're either going to have people who are just going to binge through it, or you're going to have people who are going to talk about it that opening weekend and then just stop.
I think the shock.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just going to say, I actually sadly agree with Lucas, because what they could have done is just release the first 2 episodes. First 2 episodes was enough to draw people in with what this show had. And then after that, each week people have been like, yo, what's this family's only got 10 days. What's going to happen in 10 days? Yeah. And then you do that every single week.
They never fully explained the format either. They never explains the format that, like, this is going to be 10 episodes over 10 days of this family.
Like we got on day 10, and then the house literally is on fire around them.
You know, it reminds me, and Jorge's an American Horror Story fan, the way this begins into its horrible ending. Did you see American Horror Story 84?
Yes.
Okay, see, I absolutely hated that show.
I'm with you.
But the beginning was so strong. Yeah. And when it fell off the rails, it fell hard. That's what them did to me. When it fell hard. Like a boulder on Wile E. Coyote. There was nothing they could do to save anything about it. So, I mean, again, but it's a horror anthology, so in the end, they could continue this and not use any of these people. And name it something else. Us, them, you, we. Like, find some way. Even though if you name it you and they did about an Asian family, I think that would cause problems.
They don't need to look. They don't need to play with the Asian community right now. This is not the time.
Wait. But it was the time to do this for the Black community.
Look, first off, I'm gonna ask y'all this question: was there ever gonna be a time? Realistically,
no, it's not.
That's what I'm saying.
It's never a good time to do it with anybody, but if it's executed well, people won't mind.
Yeah,
that's the best way to put it. Executed well.
I'll say if it was executed with tact, that's the way I'll put it. Because
no, I'm saying well, because again, we all pinpoint where it didn't go well. If all of those issues were non-existent with this show, I don't think people would have cared. People would have been like, "Hey, man, it's hard to watch." But how many times have we sat through things and told people or agreed it's hard to watch, but in the end, it's more than worth it that you got through it. This was not one of those situations. This was a situation where you're like, man, by the end, you're like, what the heck did I just sit through? This ain't even worth me watching. That don't mean it wasn't bad fully, but it's not worth me watching in the end. You need something that's like great. Yeah. And then you'll be like, oh, how many? Wow.
Yeah.
Horrible analogy. How horrible analogy here.
Are you gonna say Chernobyl? Is that what you're
and
gonna
I don't. Nope. Because I'm talking about a movie, and please, I don't mean to offend anybody. Oh, and even the moment I say that, I end up offending people. Oh, but God. How many Jewish people you know who saw Schindler's List multiple times, like, and said it's hard to watch, but in the end, it's more than worth it that you do. That's what the type of project this needed to be. Something that in the end, it is worth you sitting through. And it just doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, I know for, like, with Watchmen, I knew for a fact, regardless of how I felt at the very last moment, like, I was like, this is amazing. Like, so. But, yeah. Yep. So that's it. Unless they come up with the second season, you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed our review of the One and Done, or maybe more them. We'll be back later. Definitely go to check us out in the description bar below if you want to check us out on Twitter or wherever our social media is. And we'll be back maybe for Invincible. Maybe.
I thought you were about to say Underground Railroad.
I'm not putting you in that situation. Listen, I did put you in this situation. You asked to be a part of this.
You would have got in trouble if you just said Underground Railroad. I'm just letting you know that now.
No, I do want to know what you feel about Invincible. Like, legit, we haven't had a discussion about it. So I was like, next time.
Wow, I'll keep on forgetting about that show.
Yeah. And you know we get it. Well, anyway. Yeah. All right, we're going to go. Talk to y'all later.